In my latest session, I was fighting my first ever dragon as a ranger. I kept my distance for a bit, but in that moment I forgot how far my longbow can shoot. So I said out loud that I was going to check real quick, but my DM stopped me because that's metagaming. I said okay and went along with it. After the session and we all left, I couldn't help but wonder if that would have been metagaming or just something my character would have known. Can y'all help me out? If it is metagaming, it's not metagaming you should care about. Do you have any idea how many times I need to check rules or my players need to check rules? Seriously, if we couldn't look things up, I don't think our D&D game would just function at all.
So glad I'm looking up Tasha's Mind Whip for the 50th time.
Hey, isn't that metagaming?
I'm not sure if this is a horror story, but one of the few most memorable and probably unenjoyable moments in my few years of playing D&D. To start with a little context and a disclaimer, I am friends with the Dungeon Master, which is coincidentally the focus of the story. He's improved as a DM and I as a player. We talk basically every day and he runs 2 campaigns for me and now a different group. One of those being a reboot of the one mentioned in this story. So this story starts with a DM who decides to run a Soulsborne campaign, really liking the games at the time. This carries over to this day. There were quite a few players. An elf, cleric, a small dragon/lizard barbarian, I believe, a player whose class I did not know, but they basically played the chosen undead from Dark Souls, a blade singer whose race I did not know, and 2 hunters, me and a different player. We played the same race/different subrace. Anyway, as this was a homebrew campaign based on the Soulsborne universe, me and a friend decided to play Kin of the Great Ones from Bloodborne, pairing it with the hunter class we've found. She played a Child of Kos, and I played a Kin of the Moon Presence. So, something to note, the DM had a bit specifically to introduce me, due to the unique ability of my subrace to venture into other people's dreams. I got to learn a few things about the other player characters as I joined the campaign already a few sessions in, but this happened about 4 to 5 sessions later. We were finally going to Yharnam from Bloodborne and had already fought off 2 bears. We were in the clear when the DM introduced me to the Bushberry Bandits, or as everyone called them, the BBB. Now, I had never heard of these gag characters before, but the party did, and boy were they absolutely horrified. Later, we were in fact told how this encounter was pretty easily winnable had we fought instead of wanting to run away, which admittedly looking back, that was our fault, although I had no idea of their capabilities. The Blade Singer player told us just to run to the cliff edge, that she'll cast Featherfall on us to avoid confrontation with these enemies, and let me tell you that I don't think I've known the definition of pain before this. While later we were told they only had 15 hit points, they hit like a truck. 2 players were down by the end of the second round, and I went down next, being assisted by the cleric who, in the process of tailing it with me, had been knocked unconscious. I just got to the cliff edge and was met with a choice. It was either to jump off or surrender to the bandits, and while at the time I chose to surrender, with the recent update of my subrace, I would definitely have taken the option to jump. Just to make it clear, I hold no ill will towards the DM, nor the players who convinced me not to fight. I think all of them are really good friends still, although the group has been through some changes here and there. Certainly a more minor horror story. The players thought a fight was unwinnable, turns out it wasn't really that big of a deal, the party gets into a bad situation, and a bunch of people die, which, yeah, not exactly ideal. Most DMs try to avoid TPKs. This one, well, it wasn't avoided to say the least. I'm glad no one held any ill will. That's good. It is a shame that all these characters were lost in this fight, but it just goes to show that sometimes a simple, "Are you sure you want to do that?" and a little bit of narration from the DM can save the players from doing something really dumb and save the campaign from completely going off the rails with a completely out of nowhere early game TPK. I am using a throwaway account to post this. I, 24 female, have been playing the campaign with a group of college friends and my boyfriend, the Dungeon Master, for about 5 years. We've seen a lot of people come and go and had our fair share of ups and downs, but throughout it all, I have always been sure to show up consistently and put in a lot of effort into role-playing, planning, and overall just interacting with the world my boyfriend has built for us. He is otherwise an amazing and engaging Dungeon Master, which has made what happened last night just more frustrating. Our party had been enlisted to deal with an adult black dragon terrorizing the outskirts of a local village, which we gladly accepted. Upon reaching the swamps and finding the dragon currently patrolling the outskirts, we quickly realized that something was off when the dragon appeared to be uninterested in engaging in combat with us and didn't seem to recognize the deeds we accused it of doing. After a short-lived combat in which the dragon mostly attempted to ward us off with minions while it flew away from us, we were in fact able to bring it down, upon which another dragon, a Dracolich we had previously encountered a multitude of times before, appeared from the growth, hissing in anger. Apparently, our chronic Dracolich friend was hoping the Black Dragon would take us out before it would do the same to the Black Dragon in order to claim the beast's territory, and upon realizing this wasn't the case, cursed us out before flying away and leaving the remaining minions to deal with us before we took them all out. Now, initially, things went fine and were pretty amusing. Our ranger of all people was able to revivify the Black Dragon to the shock and horror of my Necromancer player character and convince it to temporarily aid us in fighting the Dracolich due to it being our common enemy. After some persuasion, we agreed, and it took us back to its lair, where the Dracolich had begun to make itself comfortable. Dragon Ball occurred, with the two dragons duking it out, while we alternated between throwing our help in when we could, and also dealing with a number of animated breath elementals the Dracolich had summoned. It was a grueling fight, but it was fun, with a number of us brought unconscious a number of times and close to death. In the end, the Dracolich was dealt with, leaving us with one final warning that he'd be back eventually, as the light faded from his skeletal eyes. Okay though, this is where it gets rough. Another one of our player characters, a Drow Paladin, was determined to deal with the Black Dragon next. Never mind the fact the majority of us were below half health or even in single digits, and I was almost completely out of spell slots. He insisted that we needed to deal with the dragon before it could fully heal and threaten the townspeople again. My player character, who is romantically involved with him and tends to be the one to calm his moods, tried to reason with him by saying that we were in no position to fight, and that we could always come back later with reinforcements to this dragon's lair. While the other party members chimed in with their own reasons, in and out of character, as to why we weren't in a state to fight again, the paladin proceeded to ignore all of us and bluntly stated, "I attack the dragon," sending us into another round of initiative. Within minutes, almost all of us save the paladin and the ranger are down. Still, the paladin and his player focused on 1v1ing the dragon, leading to at least 20 minutes of us sitting there and getting to do nothing as he has his main character moment. Eventually, the Black Dragon flies away from him and coils around me and another player character, threatening the paladin to give up before he kills both of us. You know, his traveling companion and his romantic interest. Without any concern for us, the paladin then responds by aiming a crossbow at him and firing at the dragon's scales, rolling low and missing entirely. Well, with that, the dragon rips my character's head clean off her body. I don't get a chance to have any final words or thoughts. I'm simply beheaded. Something that Revivify cannot help with. Wait, really? It can't? Oh, it can't! I didn't know that. My compatriot follows shortly afterwards, though she is only stabbed through the chest rather than having her head ripped off. Eventually, the paladin also goes unconscious and the dragon flies out of its lair and into the night. With 4/5 of our party unconscious or dead, the ranger gets to work stabilizing the paladin, while also casting Sending to inform one of our core NPCs, a high-level cleric we'd befriended, of the carnage, and asking them to send aid as soon as possible. Eventually, the cleric comes by and is able to revivify my companion, but seeing as my head has been torn off, there's nothing that can be done for me. At this point, I am livid and genuinely upset. Perhaps I was taking it a bit too far, but this is a character I'd played for 5 years and gotten incredibly attached to. For her to die due to another character's impulsivity with no voice or chance to even announce how I'd like to die, that was incredibly disheartening, especially as I had an idea of how such a thing could play out if it did happen, with my necromancy character having a deeply inset fear of death that spurred her into her studies. But I wasn't even granted the ability to roleplay my own death with agency. I was furious at my paladin friend for his selfishness, but also my boyfriend, who could have stopped this at any time, but decided to keep fueling the fire. I messaged him separately, expressing how upset I was, and while he consoled by saying he was sorry that this had to happen, that the party would eventually find a way to fix me, he had to teach the other player characters the consequences of rash and impulsive decisions, which only made me more mad because why did myself and the other player have to die because of another character's screw-up? It only got worse when I requested we end the session early, and I attempted to make my grievances known with the paladin, who left the call shortly afterwards and, according to another friend who was acting as a neutral party, texted that he felt like he was being targeted for his decisions and that he wasn't going to apologize for neutralizing a clearly evil threat, even though the dragon got away with nothing to show for his efforts but a near total party kill. I left the call to cool down after stating I wanted to talk about this further with everyone at a later date. My boyfriend has texted me since then, apologizing and asking if we could talk privately, while the Paladin has said nothing to me but posted in our group chat that he will also like to talk soon in order to say his piece. I haven't responded to either. I'm extremely bummed and not quite sure where to go from here. I don't want to make a new character after so many years of roleplaying my Necromancer, but I also don't want to roleplay and solidify the actions of what happened here tonight. I also don't know if I want to leave the campaign just yet, saving that decision for how our next group conversation goes. Any words of support or advice anyone has for me would be appreciated at the moment. Well, this certainly is... I covered this one too late, didn't I? Eyes up. There's a part 2. I am really happy to say that our group talk went well. After all of us having time to cool down and consider each other's perspectives, we Skyped in and I calmly laid out how the prior session had made me feel, helped by a lot of your comments, which articulated my feelings and arguments in a more concise way than I could have provided at the moment. Both my boyfriend/DM and the Paladin were incredibly receptive and listened to my grievances with a lot of understanding, with the Paladin even apologizing for his behavior and saying he realized that he got caught up in the moment and failed to consider his fellow party members' feelings, and that he left the call initially because he wanted to cool down and not make the situation worse in the moment. I also owed the Paladin an apology for angrily calling him an idiot in the moment, which I provided, and he accepted pretty gracefully. While we ultimately decided to retcon/rewind back to the moment where the Dracolich fell, as it would be the best action in order to avoid any hurt feelings, going forward, we've all collectively decided to utilize a timeout and talk button if we feel things are starting to go south or one party member is beginning to feel issues in or out of game. Furthermore, my boyfriend stated that he wanted to make sure the campaign still has its moments of tenseness and stakes, and that there would be inevitably moments that are similar, where party members could and would die. He ensured us that no party member would be unfairly targeted or punished, especially for another's actions. Everyone was really mature about the whole affair, and after laying everything out on the table, we agreed to pick up where we left off next Sunday and part ways, feeling a lot better. While it's not a particularly juicy ending, it is a satisfying one. I'm glad that my friendship with the Paladin and my relationship with my boyfriend wasn't negatively affected by this going forward. I want to thank you all for the supportive comments and advice, and I think it made a difference in my phrasing of my frustrations and kept the onus on solving the problem as a group, rather than lashing out. Not juicy, but this right here is the best kind of ending. My commentary would have been about how the DM definitely did not need to kill this person's player character. If they wanted to punish anyone, it probably should have been the Paladin. But the DM acknowledged that. The Paladin acknowledged their own mistakes. Everybody realized what happened and moved forward, and the game is better because of that. Instead, I'm going to talk about retconning. Retconning is something that sometimes people frown upon, but frankly, it's your game, no one else is playing it, and if you need to retcon something, I think that is okay. This is definitely a situation where a retcon is ultimately the best idea. This was decidedly not a great moment for the game. All parties acknowledged that. They acknowledged that this wouldn't result in a better campaign going forward and decided to go back on it. Yeah, does it break immersion and the timeline of the in-game story? Sure, but frankly, who cares? If you need to retcon to make sure that your group has the best experience, I think that is perfectly okay. I wouldn't make it a regular habit, but this is a special circumstance, and a retcon here was used in a very mature and generally well-used manner. Honestly, I'm just glad to see a really happy ending. We don't get enough of those around here. I, 22 female, am part of a D&D group with friends of mine, which started on a Discord server during the pandemic and became something weekly that we all like. My boyfriend is our dungeon master, the person responsible for guiding the adventure and telling the story. During the online sessions, it was easy to ignore things that bothered me because we were all new to this world and we were all adjusting little by little. And since it was something to distract us during the chaos, it was passable. But we've been playing face-to-face for a few months now, and one of our friends has started to annoy me. A lot. Basically, his problem is that he makes everything in the adventure about him, and it's making the game unplayable. unbearable. He always tries to somehow become the center of attention in the adventure. Is someone doing something epic during a battle? Well, he wants to help exactly that villain and keeps boasting about the importance of his participation. He always tries to help with things that he doesn't need to. Did another player have an idea to look for a secret object? He also decides to look for it. Does a player notice something happening? He also wants to understand and be the character to pass along the news. Writing, I now realize how silly and small these things seem, but it bothers me a lot. For me, the final straw was in the last session when I found my lost sister that I've been looking for years, and he asked to see if he notices the resemblance. He rolled a nat 20, the best possible result, and went in front of me to talk with her and said, "You are very similar to my companion over there. Do you happen to be a lost sister by chance?" So after I went home with my boyfriend, I commented on how frustrating this was and how this session had put me off the game, and he said he felt the same way. The problem is, this is a conversation I had with my boyfriend, not as a dungeon master, but as a partner, triggering the expulsion of this friend from the group. In the end, my boyfriend commented to his best friend, who is also in the group, and he and his wife had never said anything either, and were irritated. The short story is, it turned out that the subject I raised started to be passed from player to player, and everyone came to the conclusion that he was ruining the sessions for us. So my boyfriend sent him a message. Rather than making him leave his house, they just wanted to have a conversation with everyone, saying that maybe it would be better not to do the sessions together anymore. However, one of the boys in the group is close with him and commented that I was the one that started the whole debate. And they both sent me messages saying that I was a big old baddie for taking advantage of my relationship to try and rule what happens, that I was controlling, that this was only happening because my boyfriend wants to please me. And now they've commented with other mutual outside friends of the group, friends who have also been critical of me for getting him kicked out. Am I the asshole? Ooh, boy, we've got a bit of a reverse on that DM's wife story, so drum roll, please. Not the asshole. Obviously, you have a biased perspective. But, on the other hand, if you are telling the truth, which I think you are, this guy seems really annoying. Yeah, these are all smaller things, but small things, they build up over time, and eventually you realize that those small things resulted in the game being less fun. It seems like the rest of the group felt the same way with the exception of one. That's not meaningless. If the rest of the group agreed with you, you are within your right to talk to the DM, your boyfriend, about the situation. You weren't forcing him to do anything. Your boyfriend made a call. As the dungeon master, he made a decision, which is what he should do. A DM should handle problems in the group. Maybe you should have given him a second chance to redeem himself, but at the end of the day, you gave him lots of chances during the game. This is your free time. You don't need to tolerate people who are ruining it for you. Your boyfriend tried to let him go, and him and his friend decided to talk crap. Not a great sign for how that second chance would have gone. The year was 2019, pre-lockdown. It was my senior year of high school when I decided I wanted to try and play some D&D. After a girl I knew suggested I give it a try because I was always creating fun characters with such unique personalities. She thought I would really enjoy it. She was right for the most part, as I did really come to enjoy the role-playing aspect, but not so much the mathematics. Never was my strong suit. I needed a lot of help, and still sometimes do. But just like every good thing, there's bad to balance it out. The campaign begins. Most of us, 7 in total, were new to the game. 2 of our players were DMs who wanted a chance to play as players, but they both had very problematic and major rules lawyer behavior. That is, unless it benefited them, go figure. One of those 2 in particular had a crush on me, which of course I knew about, but seeing as I'm very asexual and I was very much not interested, I had my own stuff to, deal with. He had tried asking me out a couple of times outside the game, which I very politely declined his advances, as for the reasons stated above, and he would usually back off for a while after that. When we started playing D&D in the same group, I played as a child to avoid any sorts of flirty encounters in-game. He didn't like that I was playing as a child and tried many times to convince me to age her up a bit, at least 16, and I told him no. So he decided to make a big scene in the middle of the game until the DM had enough and made me age up my character to avoid any further arguing. I was pissed because it wasn't a problem for anyone else except him, and before this, we were all having a lot of fun with it. There was a reason my character was a child, and it wasn't just because of me, but because of the story of the campaign. The story goes on. There was once a secret civilization who worshipped a moon goddess made up of elven worshippers who were born with white hair and ivory skin. When the world was in need of assistance or celestial intervention, they would come together from all across the land to begin a ritual to summon the moon goddess. In the campaign, a king came to power and wanted to wipe all magic from all the lands and make it illegal to teach. So they selected 7 pure-souled children to sacrifice and 1 moon elf to be an avatar for this moon goddess. But they were all attacked mid-ritual, and things got messed up, so the goddess was summoned inside the body of my child character, who was one of the kids they were going to sacrifice. In the first session of the game, there was a magical disruption in the woods, and the king was hiring mercenaries to snuff it out for good, as it was disturbing his idea of peace, along with the main trading route. That's how the rest of the party ended up meeting my child character, which only became a problem to the rules lawyer, guess I'll call him Richard, after he realized he couldn't harass me in-game because my character was a minor. So after I was forcefully aged up, we started going on more dangerous adventures, seeing as we are now wanted for treason since my character was the source of the magical disturbance, and they let me live. During the short-lived adventure, Rules Lawyer Richard was relentless with his flirtatious endeavors, and I wasn't having it. My character still had the brain of an 8-year-old and was stuck in an 18-year-old body, so I turned down his advances in the most childish way I could imagine a kid doing it. For example, ew, cooties, and so on. Because I would not give in to his advances in-game or outside of it, he eventually went to the DM and told her he wasn't having fun, that her campaign was poorly written and stupid, and he left. I felt bad for the DM because this was her first campaign DMing and she was putting a lot of work into it. She did not deserve that at all. Shortly after that, the other rules lawyer left because they were best friends. A bunch of players eventually just stopped showing up, so the group disbanded. I was invited to 2 other groups after that, with mainly the same people as before, but much smaller and more, well, devious. I wanted to give it a try after that first campaign because it was a lot of fun aside from the unwanted advances. And since Rules Lawyer Richard was the DM, I assumed I wouldn't— Wait, what?
Oh, great lord of the hooded jacket, we know that you have killed hundreds of people and been a general douchebag this entire game, but to show our good faith, we are giving you this unlimited power umbrella of the Dungeon Master, which will give you unlimited power over this world and all of its inhabitants. We hope that you shall use it to better the lives of everyone here. Thank you, my friend.
Now I will have unlimited power over all of this world's monsters and beasts and people. You will all bow before me. My knowledge of every inch of this world shall—
Knowing everything? That sounds a lot like metagaming to me.
I assumed I wouldn't have to worry about in-game harassment since he wasn't a player anymore. I was so wrong and naive for thinking this way. As soon as I joined, it was a pool of desire dumping and not very fun at all, like the last campaign. So I let the DM know I would not be attending any more games after that, and I left with the other girl after the game finished. Needless to say, it's rough out there for an ace girl trying to play some regular old story-driven D&D. I'm gonna tell you right now, in my experience, acting uncomfortable with someone's advances in-game is not going to stop them. If they're being this insistent, you gotta tell them out of game. And if they're still insistent, you gotta get out of there. I know I pulled this person's chain a little bit by making fun of the whole DM is less of a threat thing, but it is a serious thing. When somebody takes the DMing role when they've already acted like a very bad problem player, they're probably not gonna get better. In fact, they're probably gonna get worse because as a DM, you got all the power. You can make the game however you want, and you can make it very unfun. Though, of course, just like all of us at one point, this person is new to the game. They don't understand all those intricacies, and therefore, it's important to have a good first experience. It's our responsibility as experienced players to help new people to have fun in this game, because a bad D&D or TTRPG experience as the first experience is going to lead to people really not liking the hobby. And honestly, can't blame them. Also, and this should go without saying, can we leave ace people alone? Seriously, this is becoming a theme. And that marks the end of today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tavern Adjacent podcast, where we talk about all things TTRPGs while doing some of my own homebrew stuff. It's really fun. Linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment happy endings to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, email linked in the description where you can send them over for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But even if you don't have any stories, unless like, comment, subscribe, I'll see you all next time. Farewell.